Hey guys, what up? So this video is brought to you by Dev Mountain Coding Bootcamp. If you guys are interested in going to a coding bootcamp, make sure you give them a look. The link is in the description tab below. They're focusing on all the latest web development technologies so that you can get your foot in the door as quickly as possible. Hey guys, what's up? So in this tutorial series, we're going to be looking at building a modern website using Python Flask, which is a micro framework based on the WorkZoog built-in Python server, as well as Jinja 2 template engines. But we're also going to be adding a different flavor to this tutorial series where we're going to be dealing with a client-side Vue framework, which is called Vue.js, which is really popular right now. So it's all about microservices in this day and age, and for that reason, Python and Flask are a perfect combination for being able to set up an API, which stands for Application Protocol Interface, and really it's just how you communicate with a data service. But building that data service in something like Python and Flask is actually something that's very, very quick to do, and then it works very well with something like with Vue that we'll see in this tutorial series. So in order to get started with anything with Python, you have to have it installed. So you just have to go to python.org, and then if you go over to the downloads, and then you can click on Python 3.7, which is the latest version of Python as of the time of this video, and I'm going to be installing the latest version on my machine. Alright, so when we pull this up here, what I want to make sure you guys do is say add Python 3.7 to the path. This should be the default because it really throws off beginners, but make sure you have it added to the path or you're going to be completely screwed. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and install Python on our machine. Now you can think of Python as just really just an executable program, so I'm sure you guys aren't new to Python if you're following along in the series, but just in case you are, Flask is just a bunch of Python code that's written with Python, and it uses Python to execute that Flask code. So really anything we do in Flask can be done in just simple Python, so you want to think of those two as one and the same essentially. Now when we talk about Vue, our current the client-side framework that we're going to be using for this tutorial series, that is something that's relatively new. It's based out of China, which is relatively also, it's kind of new for a popular open source language or framework or library, that whatever you want to call it. It's really more of a framework. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's used by Alibaba and a lot of different companies out there. And Vue is completely free to use. It's MIT licensed, so it's just much simpler to use for beginners, I think, compared to something like React. But if you guys are interested in React or like TypeScript, I have other tutorials on Udemy that you guys can check out. So now that that's installed, let's go ahead and close this out. What I want you to do is go to your Windows and then type in CMD to go to your command prompt. And if you're on Windows or Mac or Linux, then it's going to be something similar, but just go to your command prompt. And you want to just make sure when you type in Python that you're getting Python 3.7. And that means that Python's actually installed on your path and that you can actually execute Python code. Which that's what our emulator there is doing. So I'm going to Control Z to get out of that. Alright guys, so in this next video what we're going to look at is actually how to install Flask on our project. So what I want to do is actually figure out where my project's going to live. I have a projects tutorials directory, and inside of here I'm going to create a folder that I'm going to call Flask. And inside of here I'm going to double click, and then I can actually remove this and type in CMD. It's going to pull up a command prompt to that location. This is where I'm going to use Python's built-in package manager called pip. And this is going to reach across the internet and install all the files and everything that Flask needs in order to run. So I'm going to say pip install, and then with a capital F, I'm going to say Flask. So this will reach across the web once again. You may end up getting your your antivirus may flag it, but just allow it to go through. You could see here that I already have Flask installed, so this is going to look probably a little bit different than what you guys have if you don't have it installed. But because I already have it installed, it's not going to, just kind of tells me I already have everything I need. So in order for us to be able to write code, we need to go ahead and download a free product called Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code is a free product from Microsoft. It works cross-platform, so Mac, Linux, Windows, you can use this. It has a lot of community support, and there's a ton of packages for it, so make sure you guys download that and install it. Once you have it installed, you can go ahead and just type in Visual Studio. You should be able to see Visual Studio Code. You're going to select that. Then you're going to need to open your folder location to the tutorials folder for Flask that we just created. And you could put your project in whatever folder you want, but this is just kind of my convention for my tutorials. If you guys are new to Python, I have other Python series available on Udemy, so make sure you guys check that out. Some of the latest Python stuff is there. We're going to go ahead and create our first Flask app right now. So let's say new file, and in here we're going to say app.py, and py is the Python file extension. We're going to say from Flask, import, with a capital F, we're going to say Flask. So now that we've done that, we can now go ahead and create our app container object, and we're going to use the Flask class name that we just imported. And then we want to use this convention, this underscore convention, followed by another underscore, which allows us to run our server from the command line. Here we're going to go ahead and identify our route. So by convention, this string right here, this / is the root directory to your website. So like that's your home page. But we're identifying, okay, on the home page, whenever you route to that, I want you to fire this method, which is just going to be called the index method. And this is just a Python method, no different than anything else for Python methods. And it's just going to return a string, which will say hello world. All right, so that's the string that will be returned when we navigate to our root directory of our application. All right, so now a new convention with Flask is that it actually recommends adding an entry to our path in order for us to be able to run a built-in web server that comes included with Flask. It's not the type of web server that you actually want to run a production website in, but it's actually good enough for development. And the Flask developers felt like, it would just be a lot easier to have that shipped with the project. So let's go ahead and I'm going to open up my folder location here. And I want to show you that we want to add this to the path here so you can see, because if you try to run this application, you're going to get that the path attribute is not found. So we're going to go ahead and actually add the Flask app attribute. So we're going to say set, because we're on Windows, Flask app. And then this is where we give it the name of the project. So what is our project called? It's called app.py, right? So if we go ahead and do that, and we've now added this. So if we say Python using the M flag, we're going to say Flask run. So now you can see, though, that it says do not use a development server in a production environment. Okay, so like we clearly don't want that. You can see debug mode is off, but it says running on localhost 5000. So how do you get to that? You just have to pull up a browser. So what you do here is you just have to pull up a browser, and you're going to put in your localhost address, which is 127.0.0.1, and then colon the port that the app is listening to, which is port 5000. And that way you can see when we go to this home page, we now have this hello world. So let's go ahead and add another page to see that we can easily add another route. And we could say, you know what, this is going to be called the About Us page. So this is going to be about. We're going to say define about, and then this is going to just simply return Chris Hawks is a programmer. Subscribe to him on YouTube. I have 100,000 people on YouTube that follow me, actually a lot more than that. But if you guys could also check me out on YouTube, I have a lot of free content there. But if you go and we now have this built, what I want to show you is if we go over here and we put /about, you're going to see that we get a not found. Now the reason why is because we need to restart the server. So anytime you make new changes, you're going to have to actually kill your server. You're going to press Control-C to stop it. Just press the up arrow, the up direction arrow on your keyboard, and it will remember the last thing you ran, and just press enter and it will run it again. And now if we go to the about page, you can see that Chris Hawks is a programmer. Subscribe to him on YouTube. So that's how we created a separate endpoint. We go back to the home directory. You can see that we get this new hello world. So now we have two separate pages defined in our Flask application. All right, guys. So in the next video, we're going to actually see how to get up and running with Vue. So I actually got ahead of myself. I actually said that we would be jumping into installing Vue. We're actually not ready for that right now. So what we're going to do instead is we're actually going to look at how to get static files working for our application. Static files meaning CSS. I want to be able to add some color and some style to our header pages here. So I'm going to go to Visual Studio Code here. I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it my static folder. And by convention, everything for like CSS files and everything are usually put in the static folder. I'm going to create my main.css file, and inside of here I want to go ahead and just say h1 equals color is red, so that we know that something is working. I also went back to my app and I changed this to actually return an H1 tag. So I'm sorry I didn't show you guys that, but if you guys actually change this to an H1 tag, you can see that these strings can return just raw string, which gets put inside of your body tags of your HTML page, or you can actually return actual HTML. So in order to use templates in Flask, what I want to do is create another folder, but I don't want to put it in my static folder. I want to put it in the root directory. I'm going to create a folder that I'm going to call templates. And inside templates, we're going to create a file that we're going to call just index.html, which is like our main page. This is going to be a bunch of HTML here, so I'm going to type this in. We're going to say home page, and then I'm going to put a body tag in here. And then we're going to say hello from the templates. All right, so that's the H1 here. So we have this template. So how do we render it? We're going to go to our app. And up at the top where we have the import from Flask, we're also going to import something called render template. And it's render underscore template. So down here, instead of actually returning this string, we're going to actually say return render template. And then we're going to pass it an argument. And the argument that we're going to pass it is the, it's actually a couple of arguments that we're going to pass into this function. The first one being the actual template name, which we need to say that's in the templates directory in the index.html. So we want to use that template. And then we also want to say, you know what? Yeah, that's fine. We're just going to return the template for right now. Don't worry about anything else. Another thing too is I want to just be able to run this straight from Python. So at the bottom here, I'm going to say if. So the shorthand convention is just if underscore underscore name underscore underscore equals, and then inside here the string underscore underscore main underscore underscore. We're saying if it equals main, so if we're running it from the command line, just go ahead and run the app. So we're saying app.run. So now by doing that though, I can go to my command line and I can just simply say Python and then the name of the project, which is app. I have to say .py, sorry, on my machine. But now you can see it's going to try to run. It doesn't give us any sort of indication that the file is running. We should probably actually say something like print the server is running on localhost or something like that. We should probably say something, right, that it's doing something. So the reason why I also don't have this working is because I have an extra underscore in there. So that is a typo. I need to get rid of that. But going back over to the command prompt, if I do that, you can now see that we're getting the same functionality. And also just notice that the main difference is that we didn't have to give it all the different arguments. So before, now we're saying Python app.py, where before we had to say, you know, Python run the Flask keyword and then say run, and it uses the built-in server and stuff. But you can see, you know, the conventions behind the scenes. It's like we don't really need that sort of magic. Let's just figure it out. But here, you know, now you can listen on the port 5000. We can actually change a lot of that. One thing I want to show you guys with the app.run is we can give a command. Let me actually show you in the next video. So in this video, I want to actually focus on one of the reasons why debugging is important in Flask. And by default, the debugger is not actually set to be enabled. So what I wanted to show you guys in the last video, we looked at how we could actually set up templates, and we created our first template. But I want to show you that this isn't going to work, and really one of the hiccups that you might have when developing with Flask, and hopefully this video will straighten that up. So this is not going to be found. This is going to complain when you try to go to the home directory. It's going to say that it cannot find that templates folder. So let me go ahead and explain that real quick. If I go to the command line, I'm going to go ahead and run my app. So I'm going to say app.py. Now if I navigate over to the localhost and I try to go to this page, you're going to see that we get this internal server error. So we get this generic error message. But if we go to the command line, we get a little bit more information. You can see that the template is not found. So it's like, well, couldn't I get that in the browser? Well, by default, it's a security concern to ever throw up a server error to say what the problem is to any sort of end user, because they might be able to take that problem and manipulate it even further. So by convention, that's a security concern. But since we're doing local development, it's really not that big of a deal to just go ahead and have some more helpful debugging features in there. So what I can do is in my app.run, I'm going to say debug equals true with a capital T because it's a built-in type for Python. It's a Boolean type. And by doing that now, I can get some additional information when I run the application. So I'm going to press Control C to kill this, restart it. And now you can see that we have this, this additional debugger. It says is on, it's active. If we go over to the page and we try to refresh, we get much more helpful formatting and styling and everything. And it says template not found. It just tells you right there, boom, you don't have, well, why is it not found? The reason why it's not found is we said to look inside the templates directory, but Flask by default already does. So I don't need to do that. So by taking out templates, it's automatically going to look for a templates folder in your root directory of your project, and it's going to look for a matching template inside of here, which is index. So it's just going to be found by doing it that way. So if I go ahead and restart the server, and now I navigate back over to this home page, you're going to see that we actually get the hello from templates. So in the previous video, we created a template, and now we're actually able to see it working. We also have good debugging working. So now let's go ahead and see if we can link to the static file. So we're going to do that in the head, and we're going to see if we can actually link to that. So we're going to say link relation equals style sheet, and then href equals the location to where it can be found. So we're going to say static main.css. So we're saying look in the static folder, find the main.css file. Hopefully if everything goes well, you're going to load it. And we're going to see if we can actually get that running. So we have to kill the server again. And now we have actual CSS working with our application. So let's take it one step further, since this tutorial series is all about making modern applications. So everybody uses Bootstrap, and Bootstrap is like I said, it's just everywhere. You need to learn how to use it. So you just go to the Bootstrap. You're going to download the compiled CSS and JS code. I'm sorry, and it's just going to have some CSS and JavaScript folders. So if we go ahead and open this up, I'm going to be able to come on. All right, I'm going to be able to take both of these. I'm going to extract. Oh shoot, I did not mean to do that. I'm going to take both of these and extract this over to, I'm going to go to my project. So C colon projects, tutorials, Flask, static, put it in my static folder. So now that I've done that, you can go over to our static folder. You can see we now have all these files, the CSS and all this other stuff. So let's put our main into the CSS folder there, because I'm actually going to do that. And so since I've done that, I need to modify this location to say main.css. And I also now want to go ahead and include the bootstrap.min.css as well. And I want to include that before my CSS. So that way, if I have to ever override anything that Bootstrap's doing, my stuff will come after that. So we're going to say CSS, and we're going to say bootstrap.min.css. So now that we've done that, we're now going to get H1 styling from the Bootstrap library. So let's go back over to the home page here, and you can see that we actually now have new templates. And if I look at the H1, by right-clicking, you can see that, okay, we get the color red from our main.css. But then beyond that, like, we get all this other stuff from this type.scss, and you can see that all this stuff actually is coming from the Bootstrap project. It's all written in Sass, so that's what that SCSS stuff is all about. But anyway, that's some good helpful information. We now have Bootstrap working, and we're rocking and rolling. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back. So in this video, what we want to do is actually look at how to install a Bootstrap theme. And you can go to a website like startbootstrap.com where they have free themes that you're able to download. So we're going to download this entire Bootstrap theme, and it's a bunch of files and everything. So we have to actually figure out where we want to extract all those to. So if I double click into this, like we saw in the last file when we installed all that other stuff, we basically want all these files to go into the static folder, the same static folder that we just used for our project. So we're going to extract all that there. Now my index obviously is going to be extracted instead of from the static folder. We're going to put that into the, probably you guessed it, the templates folder. All right, so we're going to put that there, and then we're also going to replace the home page. So now if we go in and we look at the app, let's go back over to it. You can now see that we're getting all this new text and everything that's coming in. But what we're missing is we're missing all the static content. So if we look at our browser and we right click and say inspect element, if you pull up the console tab, you're going to see that we get all these 404s. It's missing all kinds of stuff from Bootstrap, Min, all this stuff. So let's take a look at what's going on here. And if I go into my application of Visual Studio Code, I'm going to close this document for right now so we can see this a little better. And you can see all this stuff in here. And we're missing the static file references to all this stuff. So if I went ahead and I said, you know what, /static and then vendor. So I'm going to just copy this specific statement. And anything that doesn't have a fully spelled out URL, like obviously the vendor, I need to put that in there. The CSS, I need to put that in there. Probably any sort of images that this thing is using, you're going to need to do that. So are we using images over here? Doesn't look like it so far. Here's an image right here, so we want to put that in the static. Here's another image. And another one. Okay, another one. Oh, shoot. So basically for the entire template here, we're going to go through and we're going to take all our static content and we're going to replace all these locations to the location where it can actually be found by our Flask application. Looks like we might almost be done with this. And I'm just kind of rushing through this, so I might miss a few, but it's not going to be the end of the world. You guys obviously understand what's going on. If you still get missing references, it's probably because you didn't update the URL. So you just have to do this a couple times to get it right. Really just once, usually, if you take your time. So we're going to paste all this in. We're almost done. Alright, so now that we've done that, if we go back and we refresh, we now get much better results. So we're still missing some stuff though. You can see missing Bootstrap min.css. That's a big deal actually. That needs to be there. So where is the Bootstrap reference? Oh yeah, look, see, we're missing the main core file there. So that's what I was talking about. Take your time, you do it right, it works. But anyway, look at that. So now we have a much better template. So we have a very modern looking website. It's very zoomed in right now. This is like the normal zoom. But you can see we got images, we have CSS, we have a very modern looking style on a Flask application very, very quickly. Alright guys, welcome back again. So let's go ahead and add a few things in here. So we're going to say an awesome tutorial by Chris Hawks. If you guys like this tutorial, make sure you guys follow me, and I have other tutorials out there. Chris Hawks is going to be the author of this. I'm going to call this Flask and Vue tutorial by Chris Hawks. All right, so then we have some more of our, so basically some custom stuff. So what I want to talk about in this tutorial is that the template engine that comes with Flask is called Jinja 2. It's a very popular template engine, very similar to Django's template engine, that is Python's other very popular framework, which is Django. And it allows us to use block tags and stuff like that. So we can use things called like template inheritance and things like that. So what I want to show you guys is that in our templates folder, we're going to create a new file for our about page. So about.html. And instead of actually saying, you know what, and inside the templates folder, I'm also going to create a new file. I'm going to call this layout.html. So that's going to be our layout page. Everything that's in the index page, I'm going to Control A, Control C, and I'm going to press Control V to paste that into the layout. So this is going to be the main portion of our app. Now, on the home page, what I want to do is after the header, this like portfolio section, I basically want this to be the home page. So I'm going to copy that entire section. I'm going to cut it out actually. I'm going to take out everything in index, and I'm just going to paste that small section of HTML there. All right, so now in the layout page, I'm going to go back to that. I'm going to say that I'm going to take this about section, and I'm going to cut that. All right, so I'm going to cut that all out. And I'm going to put that, and you guessed it, the about section. Now, in order for the about and the index to actually use the layout, and then we need to actually tell it that it needs to use the layout. So at the top, the first thing you're going to do inside these curly brace percent signs, you're going to say extends, which is a keyword, extends. And then here is the layout page. So you're going to say layout.html. And you don't need a closing bracket for this, so that does actually throw people off. But what we need to do is create a section that we're going to call our block content. And then any sort of block that you have, you always have to have an end block statement. So after your content, you're going to say just simply end block, just like that. All right, I'm going to fix the indentation here. I'm going to, if I highlight this portion, I can press Shift Tab, and it's going to indent it correctly here. And this needs to go in one. All right, so that looks good. All right, so now we have this block content section. I don't want that indented. Come on. There we go. Sometimes this editor tries to do too much for you. All right, so there. Now we're using the extends. I'm going to go ahead and copy this entire part right here. And I'm going to do that inside of the index as well. So I'm going to put that right there. And then we're going to do an end block down here. All right, so now that we've done that, let's go ahead and test it out. I'm going to show you that this isn't going to work right away because we have to do one other step. But if we go over here, you can see that it doesn't look any different. And that's because we actually need to restart the server. So do that first, restart it, and then now when you go ahead and refresh it, you're going to get a similar looking result. And the reason why is because the index page is being served and it is extending the layout. But what you're going to notice here is that our layout.html file is not saved. So I'm going to press Control S to save that. And then now if we go back over and we refresh it, you can see that we're missing some stuff. We're now getting the contact me. So it's like, well, hold on a second. So number one, contact me should probably be its own page as well. So let's go ahead and break that out and do the right thing, right? We're going to create a contact page. So contact.html. And then again, just like we've done with our indexes and everything else, in fact, I'm going to copy this entire thing and do that inside the contact. But then the section, I'm going to take all that out. So basically, your pages can look like this. And then we're going to go back over to the layout, and we're going to take out this contact section. You can actually shrink all that up. Take that out. And put that inside the content brackets. All right, so now how do we get all this content to actually show up in the layout? The reason it's not showing up is because we don't have a matching block content tag. So that's what we're going to do now, block content. And then that by adding this, it's now going to know, okay, because I'm using this template inheritance, I'm going to find my block content, and anything between those block content tags for the page being requested, it's going to inject all this in there. So we can have one layout that has very dynamic, it's a lot of reusability. So code use and senior developers and everything, it's all about code reuse. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to have duplicate code to maintain and transfer across the wire when you don't need to. But look at this. So now we get this this page. So now we just have the home page working. It says portfolio. If we wanted to get this about page working, let's go ahead and do that. So we need to go ahead and update the location inside of our templates. Go to the layout, and inside the navigation here, I'm going to find where it says about, and instead of I just need to say about, / about, and then we're going to do the same thing here, / contact. And because we're creating a new endpoint, we obviously need to go to our app and we need to create a contact page. So really, I'm gonna go ahead and just get rid of all that, paste that in there. We obviously want that to be the about. This is going to be contact. All right, you guys obviously get the point here. Let's go back over to our layout though, because I do want to, yeah, I have both of those working. This is just going to be the home page for right now, so we'll just make that the /. And then we might as well, the main, Jesus, where is it? Oh yeah, right here. This joint right here, we just want that to be the home page as well. And we're going to call this Chris Hawk's Tutorials. And again, I have tutorials for everything under the sun. A lot of stuff on YouTube if you guys want to follow me there. But if for all my latest stuff, which is usually of higher quality than stuff that I used to do back in the day, I do charge minimal for that with Udemy, but it's because I have to eat, unfortunately. All right, so anyway, guys, if we go over to the About page, we're now getting the About page loading up. We go to the Contact page, we're getting that. You may decide that, you know what, like this whole Start Bootstrap and stuff like that, it's like, well, maybe that shouldn't be in the Layout page, so let's go back over to that real quick. We're like, you know what, this big old header piece to start, we're like, you know what, header piece should be optional. This is only going to be in the home page. That's at least what I would do. So I'm going to put that up here. All right, so now we have the header. And if we go back, you can see that the About page now, we have some spacing issues and stuff. So we probably need to go modify. Really, if I probably put a... So I can decrease the padding, which I don't really want to do that. I could probably put a margin on it, right? Maybe. No, that's not going to work. Probably because it's fixed position. Yeah, it's fixed position. Anyway, we can do... We'll just say, you know what? Any sort of section, you could just say margin top. 20 pixels. You can say you can get some decent more. You get spacing, but you get what I'm talking about there. You can modify the CSS. In fact, we'll even do that together. Let's go over here. We'll go to the CSS. Go to my main.css, and we're gonna add a section, and we'll just say margin top 20 pixels. So now by doing that, we go back, and it's not taking effect. Probably because it's being overridden. I could always just press, you know what, that shouldn't be actually, that should take effect. I might have to restart it so that the CSS file gets updated, or clear the cache. That might have to be as well. You know, that's pissing me off actually. Why doesn't that take effect? You bastard. All right, so if I said specifically section div about, does it care about that? Does it care about that? Clear the cache. Oh, you know what? We're probably not loading it anymore. Yeah, we're not. Probably not. Oh yeah, that's right. We never. Okay, so that's also debugging 101. Like you'll do stupid stuff like that, where like you're like, why isn't that working? But then, the longer you've been doing this, the quicker you'll come to the realization. So we're gonna say these custom styles. Custom mofo styles is our custom styles, and we're going to call it main.css. So now that that works, I probably could just go back and say, you know what, instead of specifically saying only the about section, I want all sections to have a margin top of 20 pixels. You can now see that we have the spacing working correctly. All right, guys, so that's how we update our modern theme, have dynamic navigation, code reuse, all that stuff. Hey guys, welcome back. So in this video, what we're going to do is finally get involved in installing Vue and getting that working. So now that we have our templates and all that stuff working, and our main layout page, what I want to do is at the top. No, really, we'll put this at the bottom. We want Vue really to come after everything. We're just going to put it after everything, and we're going to add this. And I want you just to pause the video real quick, and if you could just copy this in right here. This is a content distribution network, so as long as you have internet access, this will just reach across the web and it will use Vue. In order to use Vue, what I want to do is right outside of this this block content here. Actually, let me think. Yeah, so for right now, I'm going to put this right into our layout page. So I'm just going to say div ID equals app. And it's just a simple empty div tag, so it doesn't look like anything. But after you've installed or you've included this script tag, we can go ahead and use the Vue.js library. Just so for testing purposes, I'm going to put a script tag just underneath of that. And just so you know, in JavaScript and in web development, JavaScript files are ordered in the order that they're run into. So they're ordered, whatever order they're in, they're going to go one by one, and they're going to load themselves in their entirety before they go to the next one. So that is something you want to keep in mind, and they're procedurally executed. So in order to use Vue, what we need to do is create an object, and we're going to call it our app object, and it's going to be the main portion of our app. And we're going to say use a new Vue object. A new Vue object actually takes in an object itself, which is really just a bunch of parameters, and we're going to say the element ID is the ID to the app that we just created. So it's app, and if you guys remember, we just created that just a second ago. And then what we're going to do is we're going to assign some data. We're going to create a data object, and we're just going to say that the data object equals where there's going to be a title, and it's just going to be hello world, just simple data title. So how do we reference that inside the app? Well, in order to do that, all I got to do is go back up to where I identified the app, and it's all the way up here. And if I go inside the app tags, I can now start using all that stuff where it's like I can reference now the title. It's going to know automatically, oh, he's looking for a data element because he's using these two curly braces. So this means he's looking for some sort of data element that has a key value called title. So it's going to look inside your data of your Vue object, and it's going to find title, and it's going to return the string hello world. So if everything goes well, let's press Control S to save it, pull back up our application, and when we go to look at the application, it's actually not going to work. And the reason why is because Flask is using Jinja 2. Jinja 2 uses the same two curly braces that Vue.js uses. So what we have to do is actually give alternate delimiters to our Vue.js object. So we could say, we can identify the delimiters object, and we could say, you know what, it equals, and we're just going to say this way. So it's going to be 2 square brackets, and then we'll just say 2 closing square brackets. So those are our delimiters. I need a comma after that. So you can see now that if we've done that, we need to go back up to the top here, though. And once again, because we use this same standard format in Jinja 2, and this is Jinja 2 that's rendering a Vue.js, we need to go ahead and use the new delimiters that we've created. So if we do that, we go back to the server. We're going to just Control C to restart it real quick just to make sure. And if I go over and refresh, you can now see oh god, I'm using an equal sign in there. There's a this is that's not valid JSON. It needs to be a colon. All right, anyway guys, that is so if we change the delimiters there, we restart the server. You shouldn't have to restart every time. I'm actually not going to do that. Sometimes it takes you have to restart it when you're adding new routes and things like that, but for something as simple as this, you shouldn't have to restart it. If we look at the app now and we go to our elements, we're going to look for our app object. So one of the things, if we highlight where it is, you're going to be like, oh, it's off the screen. Why the hell does it look like that? Well, we don't have it in any sort of section. You can see that everything kind of sits inside these like sections that that the app is using. So basically what we want to do is probably say, you know what, the app probably shouldn't be in the layout. Like really the app should be inside the content block. So basically I would say, you know what, we're going to use Vue on, we're just going to say on just the index page. And up here I'm going to get rid of, well, I'll keep the header really. In fact, you know what, everything inside of this portfolio, inside of this row right here. All right, so inside of this row right here, we're going to put our app inside here. All right, so there's our good app. So what I want to do is create another block section as well for our layout. We're going to create a block scripts section, and this is where we can safely put our JavaScript code, so that way it only executes after all the pages and everything can get executed. I'm going to copy this entire thing down in the layout where we have our JavaScript code. I'm going to, just below that, I'm going to put the block scripts tag here. I'm going to take this entire script section out. And this ensures that the block scripts section will be injected at the bottom of the page. And then by going back over to the index page, inside this, I'm going to paste in my script. So I don't have the indentation exactly perfect, but it's good enough for right now. So if I go ahead and go back to the application, and you can see that we now have better results inside this portfolio. We now have this hello world. This can be any sort of HTML or whatever you want it to be. Right now, title is just being rendered in nothing, but I could wrap it in an H1. I want that lowercase. And if I put the brackets inside of the H1, you can now see that we have the color that we're using from our main.css file. Hey guys, welcome back. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new endpoint that's actually going to return some JSON data from our API, our Flask server. So we're going to create a new endpoint. I'm just going to paste this in so I don't mess it up, but I'm creating a route for test. And then inside of here, I'm creating a Python dictionary object. And really, you know what, this is just going to be something, it doesn't even have to, it's just going to return a simple object. So my dictionary has a title and a genre, and we're going to use this json.dumps to return the dictionary. So what I want to do is actually import the JSON project from the Flask library, and by doing that, I can now go back to my server. I should be able to go /test, and it's going to return some JSON data. So if I run that through a JSON validator, it's going to be valid. Now, in order for me to get that data, what I need to do is go to my index.file. I'm going to modify this, this Vue object that we've created to add a few more things. So the first thing being that we want to go ahead and just for our data, we're going to return a simple object. We're just going to say return. It's just going to be an object that's going to have a title on it because we know that we need a title. The title for right now is going to have a string. It's going to be empty string. Yeah, that'll work for right now. And then down below, we want to go ahead and create a methods object. So we're going to say methods. And this is a object that has a bunch of methods on it. And we're just going to say fetch data is our function. So that's going to be a function here. And we're just going to say var data equals, and it's going to be a return object. And then here, this is where we're going to go ahead and make an AJAX call. So in order to make the AJAX call, using modern methods, what we want to do is add a script tag to our index. So just above this script tag here, I'm going to go ahead and use this other CDN here. So if you pause the video and use this CDN, this is going to allow us to use JavaScript promises in order to make an AJAX call. So in order to do that, I'm going to say, so the example, I'm just going to copy the example from the, in fact, I'm going to get rid of the data part here. I'm going to copy this entire thing. And once again, you're going to want to pause your video real quick. this is a sample demonstration that comes from the website for this project. And you can see here that this is the data that's being returned. So we just want to say, we just want to return the actual response. So we're going to say return response. And then we're going to change this some URL to our test URL. So basically we're saying if there's an error, we're not doing anything. In fact, we'll just say console.log an error occurred, which isn't very helpful, but for right now at least says that an error occurred. So this is going to return the response. Now, in order for us to actually be able to use this method, we have to do some workaround. Well, not really a workaround, but there is a ready function that is available on the Vue object. When it actually is created, it's going to go ahead and fire this initialization function. So we're just going to say what we want you to do is this fetch data. So call that fetch data as soon as you're able to. So if everything goes well, basically, this is going to, our data object is going to return this response. Hopefully the title is still there. Let's go ahead and see what happens. So if we go ahead and, I want to make sure I clear the cache and everything. If we go into the console, we have no error messages actually showing up. If we look inside the network and we refresh, we should be able to see that if everything goes well, there should be like a call out to test. You can see there is no call to test that's actually being done currently. So that AJAX call is not actually going through, which is interesting. So let's see if we can actually hit the breakpoint. So you can see that the method fetch data is not even being called. So one of the reasons why this doesn't work is this ready function has actually been changed to mounted. So we want to change that to mounted. These things changed a lot, unfortunately. Also, I want to say response.body. So I want to return the response body portion. So let's go ahead and refresh this real quick. So now you can see we're actually getting hit, and we're hitting, and you can see response, and we're returning response.body, which is really what we want. So now I just hit the wrong button. So one other thing that we need to do, that we need to change to this, and I apologize. This is something that is relatively new, at least to me. I don't recall having to do this before. But what ends up happening is after when we create this, number one, let's change our data object. You know, our data object is just like all the data that gets returned to the Vue component. There's going to be a band object that obviously is being returned by that endpoint. So we're just going to set the band object as an empty object by default. So instead of returning, what I want to do is say this.band equals response.body. So that's actually going to be the result that we're looking for. So again, instead of just returning the response.body, you want to say this.band equals response.body, because there is no, this is just the proper convention for loading the data and then binding it to your state. So anyway, if we go back, if we refresh the page, we're going to get hit on this response here. You can see again, response.body is an object with two values on it. And we go ahead and from the result, we have property or method title is not defined on the instance, but referenced during the render. All right, so then the reason why is because instead of saying we need to reference our band object, because obviously the band object is being defined here. AJAX call gets fired when it's mounted. It then takes that band object and it replaces it with the response.body. That's what's going on. And now we reference the band.title. Again, we go back to our code. This should really work now. And then finally we get Bayside. So that is how we actually set up a RESTful service, call that RESTful service using Vue.js, take the data that we've called, bind it to our Vue.js component, and we're good to go.